more that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
All right, social media, welcome to Live at 5 on Tuesdays with Jumpstart Mastery. I'm actually using my laptop camera today because my Gucci podcast camera has stopped working. So I'll figure that out, but that's why there's a little bit of a video difference. But welcome. It's delightful to have you here, and we have a very meaningful topic that applies to everyday life, I would imagine, for nearly everybody. And the subject is regulating yourself when you feel attacked. These lives that we do on Tuesdays are for everyday situations with everyday people. The context doesn't matter. And the recommendations that we make are from a crisis de-escalation context and landscape and knowledge base, but they regard something fundamental, and that is the interactivity of human beings. How do we make sense out of a world that appears to be more and more polarized every day? I enjoy this topic because in some of the settings in which I have worked previously and in some contexts today, I am in my own community an elected official. I can experience this. I can perceive or feel attacked, unfairly appraised, unjustly spoken to. Someone could be misinformed, and as a result, I feel someone is describing me in a manner that's undesirable. I'm sure that everybody can identify to some degree with what that feels like. And I would say that reactivity to that is something that I think everyone can also identify with. And reactivity to being attacked is not always decisive. It is sometimes very destructive to the overall interaction in its presentation, and causes someone else to be reactive. And sometimes we can leave those interactions with regret, wishing that we were, more stoic, more noble, more composed when we perceived or experienced this verbal attack. I'm sure all of you can identify with it. I know I can identify with it. The first thing that we would say is that preparation for getting better at that does not occur during those events. The more events that you are exposed to on that basis, let's say your job or your profession or your career path puts you in touch with that regularly. That doesn't mean you're naturally going to get better at it if you don't think you're very good at that, or if it's so unpleasant that you kind of dread those situations or settings where this could come up. The time to get better at that is in between those events. And well, what does one do then, you might ask? What does one do to get better at being attacked? To be better at observation of negative emotion, observation of thought life, doing this with a coach or a provider can be very helpful. Also, reading some of the greats who were, let's say, involved in philosophical or political life, who seem to do rather well in the subject of debate or contest over ideas. There are some political officials who are particularly good at this. I won't name them because the ones that I think are good at it, you might feel or not. But that might give rise to a meaningful question. What's good at this? What does good at this look like? Does it mean just being a doormat? No. Does it mean not responding? No. It just means that your personal appraisal of yourself is not going to be unduly influenced by someone engaging in what we're describing in this discussion as an attack. Well, what are some other ways a regulated presentation might look like? Because we're talking about the stimulus, things are fine. Then all of a sudden you perceive that you're being attacked and now you have to deal with it. Well, we can turn to the great Tony Blauer when we have to deal with that moment of what he would refer to as the ambush. Your nervous system and emotional state are going to feel an impulse. That's normal. The impulse is going to have a relationship to how close the danger is. If it's very physical, your nervous system is going to animate your body. If it's not physical, but it's emotional, it's going to activate a lot of the same circuitry without activating the startle flinch response. So, what he would describe is that a fear spike could potentially take place, an intense arousal of emotional state. Boom, something's happening here. Accepting that it's happening is the first instruction that we would provide, which comes straight out of Tony. Accept that this is happening. I'm being attacked by someone who clearly is angry or misinformed or hurling negative appraisals on me for some reason. Accept that it's happening. Accept that my best option at influencing meaningful behavior is not going to be to react in kind, but to manage this impulse and lean into the duress of it being present and observing it while I stay committed to my thinking brain, wider diversity of thought and expression, and formulate a response. Formulate a response. What might be a way to form a response when we're being attacked? A VDSP is not a bad strategy. People who are involved in de-escalation are routinely verbally attacked. Initially is when that generally occurs, when they show up. Any kind of first responder in the behavioral health space can identify with that experience. Hey, it sounds like you're very angry with me and attacking me. Understanding is really important in order for change to occur. If you'd be willing, how about you'd slow down just a little bit and let me capture all the information you're saying. That way I can try to form a response that might help your anger at me right now. This has a very salutary effect on people. When people who are attacked, I said earlier, what's the mark of being good at this? It is clearly that your emotional needle is not throttling all the way up during someone's attack. Now, I'm not saying that this is easy. This is hard, but it is doable. And I have had moments where I have felt very good about myself following an interaction where I was being negatively appraised or wrongly appraised, or someone was misinformed and clearly acting out on intense emotionality when engaging me in any capacity, whether that was I was engaging in de-escalation or doing something on the election front or working in an elected capacity. There is a duty that comes along with being in those roles, and that is not blaming. The duty is not blaming the world on change because my emotional state is now different because something in the world has changed. I am responsible for my emotional state. Where this is particularly challenging is in our intimate relationships. In our intimate relationships, we have vulnerability because we have need. And if that need is going to be placed at risk by someone's anger, disappointment, frustration with me, and I'm experiencing fear of loss or fear of relationship. That's something that I have to manage. That's why it's particularly hard in intimate relationships. But let's get back to the general public. There are some people that you've probably seen that are particularly good at not looking animated when somebody is getting animated at them. Maybe you've seen it at a traffic stop. Maybe you've seen it in a convenience store or a coffee place. Maybe you've seen it at work. And maybe you've seen other people not do it so well. They were particularly reactive when they were misjudged or misappraised or subject to someone's anger. There is a very worthy and palpable goal not far away from where you are now, if you're struggling with this, that you can get to. And that is the millisecond that Viktor Frankl talks about in Man's Search for Meaning between the emotion and the action. There are people who justify their emotional state by describing things in the world that are wrong or broken. And there is almost no time between their observation of that event and then their feeling state. And then if you asked them, they would credit that they are justified in their anger because that thing is wrong. And in this context, what we would suggest is that that's not completely true. Are they within their right to have strong feelings about something that appears broken in the world or in another human being? Certainly. Do they have agency over how they articulate their ideas and express their emotions? Absolutely. Are they devoid of that responsibility? No. They have a responsibility to own their message. If you've ever had regret or guilt following one of these, what I just said might have resonated with you. And if it did, we would encourage you to develop a practice of recognizing the things that might cause you high emotional arousal and try to get better at observing those things in yourself without judging yourself. That's a very liberating experience, to no longer have a reactive, to no longer engage in reactive actions following some stimulus that occurs in the world. Think about that. Imagine being attacked, feeling the impulse and recognizing I'm not going to die, and it doesn't change a single solitary thing about who I am. So I'm going to ride that impulse. I'm going to organize my thoughts, and I'm going to form a response. And the response that I'd like to form is going to be one that hopefully brings about resolution, brings about understanding. VDSP is one strategy for that. To validate what you're observing so that the other person knows that they're seen, heard, and understood, you're going to defer, which is refer to a principle that's shared, a rule, policy, law, shared value, suggest an immediate course of action, and describe how it serves them. Doesn't matter even if they know what you're doing. I can't tell you how many times Gary Nesner has said in educational settings, hostage negotiators help hostage negotiators all the time with things that they have been trained to do. It still works, even if you know what someone is doing, particularly if it's genuine. So the time to get better at regulating yourself when you're feeling attacked is not by looking for opportunities to be attacked. It is by virtue of the journey of getting better at observation without judgment of yourself. Observation without judgment of yourself. Can you observe something that's happening in you without feeling some kind of way about it? What Krishnamurti would say, it is that in the pure observation itself, you'll lose the capacity for judgment. You'll just see it. So if someone is presenting something at me and my nervous system's risk circuitry gets activated because it just came my way, that impulse is really not that long. It's pretty brief if I'm not interested in fueling it. If I'm interested in understanding what's happening here, the impulse will be the impulse. That's electrochemical. Following the impulse, I'm on the hook for what I do here. And I get good at that by taking periods of time between these events to better understand what animates me, to at least look at it and appreciate it. And in the doing of that, the power of that occurring out in the world will diminish because now you are gaining understanding of yourself. That's the whole point. So, hacks into other things you can do to regulate yourself when you're being attacked, so to speak, would include, I would say, check out Andrew Huberman on Instagram, who's got a lot of breathing hacks that are very, very helpful in self-regulation. Also, bilateral stimulation. He's always coming up with things that you can do in the physical realm to quickly influence your parasympathetic nervous system. Check them out. Regulating yourself when you feel attacked is something that you can get better at right away. Today, you can get better at it today. Start leaning into understanding and looking at what animates you and why. And knowing that even if it animates you, it does not have to drive how you express yourself or manage it in the future. Which means you taking more responsibility for your own emotional state. That's a lifelong journey. And when you do that, the world becomes an easier place to navigate. So I hope you got something out of this. I enjoy coming to this setting and doing it with you. All the very, very best to you. We'll see you on Thursday at the Jumpstart Mastery Network, and hopefully I'll have this camera problem resolved. Take good care.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.